This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code SPOTIFY and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
So, Russ, there's nothing more disturbing to me than someone who would prey on people who are super vulnerable in our society. The woman I'm going to tell you about today did just that. She hurt and manipulated and even killed the people that she was supposed to be helping. This story proves that wolves really do live in sheep's clothing. This is the case of Dorothea Puente. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wife of Crime. Thanks for tuning back into Wife of Crime this week. Say hi, Russ.
Hi, Russ.
You're just sitting over there staring at me.
Well,
You normally do the introductions now.
That's not true. I was trying not to interrupt you because you always tell me don't interrupt you.
Well, that was nice. So, hey, guys. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Wife of Crime. This is Russ. We got Jess on the microphone. I'll do my introduction. And we're back.
So, I have something to say. Last week, I talked about all these awesome people who love our podcast and share it, and I left someone out, and I felt really bad about it. So this section is called Jess the Jerk, because Jess was a jerk last week and left out one of my coworkers who tells everybody how much she loves the podcast, who tells her friends, who wrote us a 5-star review, who tells me all the time how funny Russ is. And her name is Nikki, and I didn't mention her. So, sorry, Nick, but now I mentioned you.
I think we should call this, We Forgot You, But We Still Love You.
Yeah.
Because this isn't the first time.
Yeah, we've definitely forgotten people before, but we love everybody who supports us. I also want to give a shout out to... Actually, a bunch of people shared the Iceman episode. Well, not just the Iceman episode. Actually, people shared other episodes too, but shared us on Instagram last week, so I have a little list.
Yo, I saw someone shared us in London. That's pretty dope. Shout out to you. I don't know your name, though.
Her name's Laura.
Shout out to Laura.
And she's from London, and that's so cool. All right, so let me list off these shares. Tommy, Tara, Kelly, Nikki, Gus, Amanda, Maddie, and Laura. Thank you so much for sharing on Instagram.
So Tommy is a guy that I know, and after last week about talking about how I stole baseball cards when I was a kid, he said his uncle owned the baseball card store, which is pretty funny.
Do you think he's serious?
I think so.
Really?
I don't know.
I don't know. Tommy jokes around a lot, so I wonder if that's real.
Why ain't giving you shit, Tommy? He said I owe him $350.
You have to text him and ask him if he was serious or not.
No, I'm blocking him. I owe money.
So this week, I decided to do a female serial killer. And this one was actually a suggestion from a girl who follows us on Instagram, and she shares us a lot. Her name is Shelly. And she suggested this a while back, and it was like a cool coincidence because earlier in the week that she suggested this, I had seen a YouTube video about the people who bought this serial killer's house and how they live there now in her house, and just a whole interview with them. So I planned on doing her, but then Shelly suggested that I should do her because she's from the Sacramento area, the serial killer, and Shelly grew up in Sacramento. And so she suggested this after our Richard Trenton Chase, the vampire episode, because remember how I said that there's a lot of serial killer activity in Sacramento?
Yeah.
Well, this is another Sacramento serial killer, and she was a lady.
I think it'd be cool to buy a serial killer's house and then pretend it was haunted and then write a book like the Amityville Horrors and then become rich. Or you could do haunted house tours and say it's haunted. Like, you could do all kind of stuff.
You could.
We got to find a serial killer's house.
Well, these people who bought this serial, I would never.
And they're probably discounted.
By the way, just FYI, I'm never buying a known serial killer's house, ever.
If there's any serial killers out there and you're selling your house, I'll buy it. But I'm not telling you how to hit me up. Nope, don't hit me up. List it on Zillow or something.
I will never buy a serial killer's house, just FYI. But these people did, and they actually embraced it. And at first they didn't really do anything, but they had a lot of gawkers. And once they had all these gawkers and people come by and take pictures of the house because they knew the reputation.
Money time.
They embraced it. No, they didn't do it for money. They did it for, like, as a joke almost.
Idiots.
And they put out like a mannequin dressed like the lady, Dorothea Puente is her name, and just a couple signs and stuff like that. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But our killer's name is Dorothea Puente, and she was just pure evil, like pure evil. In the late 80s in Sacramento, the homeless population grew dramatically. And if you're homeless, it's kind of an ideal place to be homeless because the weather. Yeah, the weather's not terrible. And Sacramento has a lot of resources for people who are struggling or homeless and helps them get on their feet. An older woman by the name of Dorothea Puente bought a large Victoria home at 1426 F Street, and she converted it into a boarding house for homeless people, elderly people, or mentally ill people, just people who were lower income, who were kind of down and out. They couldn't, older people who couldn't afford a really nice nursing home.
She's starting off caring, at least.
Oh, no. She didn't care. This was, no, don't be mistaken.
She's letting people in to kill them.
Don't be mistaken. She did not care about anyone but herself. So she opened this boarding house, and she would cook her residents home-cooked meals. She would do their laundry. She would fix them their nightly nightcap cocktails that they loved. And social workers really loved Dorothea because she not only seemed to truly care about her residents, but she kind of made a place that they could truly call home. Until she would steal all of their Social Security checks and then brutally murder them and bury them in the yard.
No, that's weird, but people wouldn't know they're missing?
So no.
Homeless people, no one looks for them because they just assume they're outside sleeping.
Well, we'll get into the whole crime, but no, for a while, people didn't suspect that some of the residents were missing until one resident went missing and his social worker was determined to get to the bottom of it. And that's what finally was Dorothea Puente's downfall, was this social worker named Judy who wasn't buying her bullcrap.
What year did you say this happened?
So this happened in, she eventually got caught in the 80s, in 1982, I think it was. But she was born in 1929, and her life was full of cons and crimes, tumultuous marriages. She was in and out of prison. She's
a gangster.
Crazy life. Not a gangster, a scumbag. A lot of gangsters are scumbag. She is the ultimate self-centered, zero conscience, terrible, evil scumbag. And it's pretty sick. So, this seemingly sweet, loving, gray-haired older lady said she was in her 70s, but she was actually a cold-blooded, pathological, lying sociopath who was in her late 50s.
Damn, she aged terribly.
No, she did it on purpose. Everything was on purpose, Russ. This is the thing. Female serial killers, what I've realized, this is not across the board. This is just in general. Female serial killers tend to have different motivations than male serial killers. Male serial killers a lot of times are fantasy driven. They do it because of these crazy fantasies or these weird obsessions. Female serial killers tend to kill either to prove a point or because they want to gain something. They're greedy.
Can't trust these women.
We can't trust these serial killer women, that's for sure. Not all women, shut up.
But they always have ulterior motives. Watch out for these women. I'm telling you.
Whatever. So
just married me so I could do a podcast with her.
That's the only reason I married you.
That's it.
You're so stupid. So, her motivation was literally pure greed. She came from an abusive and neglectful childhood. She had a lack of conscience and a lust for money, and this was the perfect recipe for this female serial killer. She had 9 confirmed murders, but is suspected in 15 deaths altogether. So I'm going to tell you, like I always do, about her early life, tell you about her multiple crimes and her cons and her multiple marriages, and then we'll get to her
I have a question.
Murders. What?
Are you ready?
Are you ready? It's going to be different than hearing about a male serial killer because she, like I said, is so money driven, and
that's okay.
It's not okay. When you hear what she did to people, it made me legit mad. Like when I was reading and writing this out, I was getting annoyed, like angry to the point where I almost didn't want to talk about it.
But you get annoyed for dumber things, like if I don't put the dishes in the dishwasher.
You always say that it's okay about someone who's motivated by money, but not when they're killing innocent people, like old people, mentally ill people, people who are vulnerable.
I tell the story, you're giving it up now.
No, but that's annoying. Don't say it's okay.
She's really annoyed now.
Her
eyes are squinty.
Don't say Don't say it's okay. All right.
It's okay.
Stop, Russ.
Don't tell me what to do.
Dorothea Puente was born January 9th, 1929. Her maiden name was actually Dorothea Helen Gray. Her parents were less than stellar, as you can imagine. Her dad was an alcoholic, and he suffered from severe depression. And he would go for days, sometimes months on end, without getting out of bed. Her mother was the opposite. She was also an alcoholic, but she was like a wild child. She would gallivant and go partying, and she would leave for days on end. So Dorothea and her siblings were left to fend for themselves.
At least she had one parent home. Lazy dad.
He was depressed and wouldn't get out of bed or do anything or take care of his kids. So it doesn't matter if he was home. He was not doing anything. So they had to fend for themselves anyway.
He was a dud.
Definitely a dud. So, when Dorothea was 8 years old, her father died from tuberculosis. And 1 year later, her mother was killed in a car crash.
When she was how old?
8 years old, 8 and 9. When she was 8, her father died.
Wow.
When she was 9, her mother died. And her siblings were sent into the foster care system, and she ended up being sent to an orphanage. Now, this is like the Depression. She was born in 1929, so this was like 1937. So this was during the Depression. And at that time, life was tough for children in an orphanage. They, little Orphan Annie, that totally glamorized how the orphanage was back then. But they were using these kids for cheap child labor. They would abuse them. They would molest them. I mean, they got treated terrible in these orphanages. So as a young child, when she would go to school, she started telling schoolmates and teachers a bunch of lies about her life. She would make up all of these stories. And, kids tend
probably wanted to have, make it seem like she had a good life. You don't want to seem like you're just doing terrible.
No, it's true. And, some people say that You know, a lot of kids, they make up lies. I mean, kids lie. That's what they do. But she would make up all of these lies, and she would get caught in them, and then she would change her story. And she did this for years. When she was 16, she left the orphanage, and she met a soldier who just came back from war. His name was Fred McFraw, and she married him to kind of, you know, get out of the system, pretty much.
Married at 16.
She got married at 16. She got pregnant right away and had her first child when she was 17. But she was incredibly self-centered and didn't want to be a mother and wasn't a good mother, so she gave the baby to her husband's relatives.
Probably better off.
Well, she got pregnant again pretty much immediately after, and she gave the baby up for adoption right away, which just shows that she doesn't really care about anyone but herself. She got pregnant for a third time right away. Damn. And supposedly suffered a miscarriage, but there's some suspicion that she actually may have caused this to happen, like an at-home abortion. Her husband left her immediately after this and filed for divorce. So after her first husband left, she moved to Washington State, and she began working at this ice cream parlor, but she really wanted to make a lot of money and have nice clothes and have nice things. So to her, this ice cream parlor job just wasn't cutting it, and she decided to start hooking. So she became a prostitute, and to her, she didn't do this because she was in a desperate situation or anything. To her, this was her way of making money, and she was in control of this whole situation. She enjoyed being a prostitute, not because of the sex, but because of the money that she got, and she was able to take advantage of these Johns. She would steal their stuff. She would steal their money. Sometimes she would steal their checkbooks.
I ain't mad at her. That's part of the game.
And I know, but she becomes such a scumbag.
Well, you know, you go with a hooker, they might steal your wallet. It's like, that's how it goes.
Well,
not that I
was going to say
know hookers, but if you see it on TV, you know, you go in the bathroom, they go through your wallet, they take it, they leave. It ain't like Pretty Woman.
That's true.
Yeah, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. That was silly.
So anyway, she...
Or maybe you can't turn a hooker into a housewife. I've seen people that turn hoes into housewives.
Just stop while you're ahead. So she started prostituting. She really enjoyed the money she was making, and she liked the fact that she could make up this whole identity for herself. She changed her name to Cherry. And she did. And she made up this whole new identity, this whole new life. And this was something she would do. She would lie to so many people. She would go to local bars. She was like, you know, a regular in some local bars because she ended up becoming an alcoholic. She was a binge drinker. So she would end up in these bars, and she would tell tons of lies about her life. She said, you know, she was a lawyer, and then sometimes she would say she was a rockette at one point in her life. She would make up all of these lies.
Sounds like fun.
Just trying to make her life seem more interesting than what it was.
Yeah, she don't care. If those people don't matter to you, tell them anything. Who cares? Go in there, get drunk, tell stories. Who cares?
You're identifying too much with this story.
Yeah, you could lie to people, have a little fun.
You're not even like that, though. You don't even do any of that.
I don't lie, but it could be fun. I mean, sometimes I exaggerate stories, but...
No, you don't.
No, I don't even do that. That's true.
You're one of the most honest people I've ever met in my life. You're, like, brutally honest.
No, I guess.
It's kind of a joke. People who know us know that I tell Russ sometimes, like, don't be so honest, please. Don't tell the truth all the time.
And she goes, can you just lie? I'm like, no.
So she, one day she went to a store and she was writing a check, and it ended up being a stolen check. She was acting really suspicious, and the store owner noticed it and decided to call police. When he called the police, they came, picked her up, and she immediately admitted what she did, but she said, you know, she tried to make up a story. She said, oh yeah, I'm using this check, but the guy I got it from, he let me use it. He signed it over to me, which obviously wasn't true. She ended up being she ended up being sentenced to 1 year in county jail, but then she was paroled after only 6 months.
Damn, for a checkbook?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, it's fraud. So once out of jail, Dorothea became pregnant again with a random dude's baby. This time, she immediately gave up the kid for adoption.
Your girl Cherry has kids really fast.
I mean, her name's Dorothea, not Cherry.
She's very fertile.
So after being out of jail for a little while,
Cherry was easier to remember than the other name.
Than Dorothea.
Yeah.
So after she got out of jail and had this baby and gave it up for adoption, she ended up meeting a guy named Axel Johansson.
And then got pregnant.
No, not yet. He was a merchant marine. And so merchant marines, they're at sea every 3 months. They're gone for 3-month stints. So they go 3 months home, 3 months at sea, 3 months home. So since he spent a lot of time away from the home, he couldn't keep track of what his wife was doing because she's a pathological liar. And, he had no idea what she was doing.
She was hooking.
She wasn't hooking. Well.
Is that a term?
Yeah, it's a term. So she wasn't necessarily hooking, but she was going to bars and picking up men and sleeping with them while he was at sea.
Now she was giving out freebies.
Yeah, she was giving out freebies.
Might as well have charged.
So they ended up being married for 14 years. And their marriage was very tumultuous and I'm sure not very satisfying for him. But in the late 50s, she decided she was going to be done being a prostitute and she was going to become a madam. So she
a pimp.
Rented a storefront and she claimed she was running a tax business or some legit business out of this storefront. The storefront, the business was only open from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, so people didn't really suspect it. They just
like a union hooking job.
They just saw men coming in and out of the storefront. So a couple people were like, what's going on here? But people didn't really think anything of it for a while.
He works off the books. Why does he need the tax guy? Don't pay no taxes.
So in reality, this was a brothel. She ran it for a little while until some people, were suspicious. 2 police officers went undercover posing as truck drivers.
Oh, I bet they did go undercover.
They went in. No, they didn't get any services, but they went in and they caught Dorothea there. And she claimed, I was just visiting a friend. I had no idea that this was a brothel where, in fact, she owned the business and she was the one renting this storefront. So she ended up getting sentenced to 90 days in jail. And after she was released from jail, her husband, Axel Johansson, he divorced her. So now she decides, okay, I'm going to get away from this whole prostitution thing. And she decides to become a nurse's aide for disabled and elderly people. She starts working.
That's a shitty job.
She starts working, yeah, literally. I used to do it. When I was in nursing school, I did it for a year to get my foot in the door at the hospital that I work at, and it's definitely a hard job. It's very hard on your body, and you got to wipe a lot of butts.
And your nose.
And your nose, it's true.
Just saw a lot of old, wrinkled butts. I've never seen an old butt.
I mean, as a nurse, nurses all over the world see a lot of butts. That's what that's who else is going to wipe our patient's butt? Sometimes you can't let someone sit in their poop all day. You have to clean them.
I don't think there's an amount of money. Well, there is an amount of money. There's a price on almost everything. But it would cost a lot of money for me to wipe an old man's butt. So he might even be sitting on his balls.
Sometimes they do. I mean, it just comes with the territory of having balls.
Tell a story. No.
So she started working in boarding houses as a nurse's aide. And this is where she learned the business of what boarding houses were. And like I said, they were houses where people would come and they would, a lot of them were lower income people and they would stay in these 16-bed houses and they would live there. And it was kind of almost like a bed and breakfast, like a mini nursing home almost. So she worked in and started learning the business. And now she's getting a little bit older. She's getting into her early 40s and she starts gaining a little bit of weight. And she became very insecure because she's very preoccupied with her looks and her, she's very surface oriented. So she's very preoccupied with her looks and having nice things. And since she started gaining some weight, she decided she was going to start going after much younger men because...
Instead of losing weight.
Well, yeah, instead of losing weight, she would
If you don't like weight, lose weight.
Anyway, so she was insecure, and she started going after these much younger men, and she was fluent in Spanish. So she met a man named Roberto Puente, and he was 19 years younger than her, and she told him that she was originally from Mexico City, and that she owned...
Wait, is she Mexican?
No, she's white.
She can't be from Mexico
But she spoke
City.
fluent Spanish, like I said.
Well, some Spanish people look white.
Well, she said that she was originally from Mexico City and she owned property. She was a pathological liar, remember? She tells everybody lies. God knows. I mean, we know where she's really from, but I'm sure a lot of people had no idea who she really was because she lied so much. So he became suspicious of her multiple lies, and after less than 2 years, he filed for divorce. So in 1976, Dorothea got married for the 4th time, this time to a man named Pedro Montalvo. And he was an alcoholic who was really abusive, and they had a pretty tumultuous marriage as well, just like her other ones. She, like I said before, was an alcoholic, and she would binge drink, so the two of them mixed together, it just was very toxic. And he ended up leaving her in less than 2 months. So he really wasn't about it.
He was smart.
Definitely.
Everyone stood in too long. Wait, she's had like so many marriages now. She's probably like 100.
No, she's only in her late 40s. She's been married 4 times.
She reminds me of Elizabeth Taylor. Didn't she get married a lot?
Elizabeth Taylor did get married a lot, yeah.
She
She was
crazy.
beautiful.
She was very pretty, but she probably was crazy.
Well, she was beautiful. I don't know if she was that crazy. I'd have to look up Elizabeth Taylor.
So what happened was people like, oh my God, Elizabeth Taylor, she wants to marry me. Then you're in the house and like, oh my God, she's so annoying.
She was so beautiful. So, where was I? Oh, yeah. So after this divorce...
Is she still alive?
The one we're talking about, Dorothea? Or
no,
Elizabeth Taylor?
Elizabeth Taylor.
No, she's dead.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So after this divorce, she went back to the last name Puente and decided to buy a home and open her own boarding house. On the main floor of the home was a kitchen and common area, and then she had an office with a bunch of fake diplomas and a fake nursing license in there hanging on the wall. She had basic medical equipment, and since she wouldn't allow any super ill people to live with her, she didn't have to have like a doctor working with her or a medical license. And she would just have this doctor come once a month to check on the residents. She ran the boarding house for 2 years, all along stealing her tenants' Social Security checks and cashing them. To stay in good with the community, she would do charity work, and she would treat all the local social workers to like lavish catered dinners just so that they would keep sending her residents and she could keep stealing their money.
Wow, she probably seemed like such a good person.
Yeah, everyone thought she was such a good person. She was, she never gave off any indications of being this, scumbag who was stealing from her tenants. So this is like how she kept her persona up as being this loving, caring lady who loved to help her community. So then one of her tenants, he started living with her, and then he got sentenced to jail, and he went to jail for a little while. When he got out, he expected a bunch of his SSI checks to be waiting for him, but when he got out, he had nothing waiting for him because she had cashed his Social Security checks. So he had no money when he got out of jail. He called police right away, and she said, no, he signed them over to me. He signed all these checks over to me, and he denied it. They ended up doing an investigation against her. Rather than go to trial, she took a plea deal, and she ended up being sentenced to 5 years. She ended up getting sentenced to 5 years of parole and ordered to go to psychiatric counseling. So she didn't have to go to jail, but she did have to start seeing a psychiatrist for the first time in her life. And this is when she was finally diagnosed with a disorder. And the psychiatrist said
piece of shit syndrome
that she had schizophrenia. And this is what this psychiatrist claimed, that she had schizophrenia and that she wasn't necessarily a threat to anyone as long as she would take her medication on time and go to counseling. She wouldn't be a threat to anyone, but he would soon regret that later on, a few years from now. So Dorothea worked menial jobs and then decided to, go back to being a home health aide. She decided it was time to change her looks as well. So she let her hair go completely white. She wore these large round glasses and started dressing to make herself look older than she was.
So she looked like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Well, no. Well, she didn't look like Mrs. Doubtfire. She looked like a very sweet little old lady.
Like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Well, I guess, yeah, but she didn't look like a man dressed as a woman like Mrs. Doubtfire did.
Well, looked like a sweet old lady to me. R.I.P. Robin Williams.
I know. That was a good movie.
He's a good dude, I think.
I know.
He had good energy.
He did have a good energy. So she began telling people she was in her late 60s when in reality she was about 49 years old.
So she did the opposite of what all women do.
Yeah, she did.
Because all women say they're younger. Just like my nanny. My nanny is my grandma. And people would ask her how old she is. And she would say, none of your business. She wouldn't even lie. She was gangster.
Your nanny was gangster. So yeah, she did totally opposite of what other women do, but it was all a scheme for her. She wanted to look older because if you look like an old sweet lady, no one's going to suspect you of doing crimes and being a con artist. They're not going to look at you in that way as easily. You know what I mean? So for her, this was a perfect way for her to get away with a lot of stuff because people aren't going to suspect the nice old lady.
Oh, when I'm old, I'm going to do all kind of stuff. I'm going to hit kids with my cane and everything.
Why?
Because it's fun.
You're so full of crap.
No, I would. I'll definitely be the get off my lawn guy, even if I don't care about my lawn. Right now, I don't even have a lawn. I don't like them parking in front of my window.
Oh, boy. So she also, like I said, spoke fluent Spanish, and she told people that she was a doctor from Mexico City, and her license didn't transition over to America. And she got a lot of people to trust her in that way. She began renting the third-floor apartment at 1426 F Street. It was a large Victorian home that was owned by a young Latino family, and they absolutely loved her. They looked at her as like a grandmother type to their two children.
She was like abuela.
Yeah, she was like an abuela to them. They had 2 young daughters, and she would nanny for these their young daughters.
I bet she couldn't cook no good Spanish food. That's how you could tell if an old lady is really Spanish, because they all know how to cook that good-ass food.
That's probably true.
Everyone I know.
I wonder if she did know how to cook.
Yeah, you go up there and she's making hamburgers. She ain't no abuela. She's grandma.
That's probably true. So she got in really cool with this family. She would nanny their daughters, and she would continue working as a home health aide on the side. The old people that she would watch claimed that she was stealing from them, but she just blamed it on them having dementia and saying they were old and losing their minds, and no one investigated it because they thought, oh, maybe they're just mistaken. You know, they have dementia. Maybe they just think they're paranoid and something's happening. So in 1979, Dorothea gets an assignment with a woman named Esther. Esther is in her late...
That's an old woman name.
Yeah, that is Esther. So Esther's in her late 70s, so she was an old woman. Still mostly independent, but she had this heart condition, and so she needed help just with like little things because she would get a little short of breath sometimes, so she needed help like with cleaning and doing her laundry, just like daily things around her house. So Dorothea began working with Esther, and as soon as she did, her health status dramatically changed, and she was rushed to the ER multiple times. She would have irregular heartbeats and shortness of breath way more often, and coincidentally, these episodes...
Not only did she steal her check, she stole her breath.
She did. And probably other possessions. She stole from...
Her health.
Her health.
Her regular heartbeat.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
How you steal that stuff? That's crazy.
You're so... She gave her medication. So at first, her doctor, Esther's doctor, dismissed all of this and said, no, it's no big deal. Nothing's really happening. But after thinking about a while, he decided it can't hurt to make a home visit. So he came to the house. The house was spotless. It was very well kept. And Esther, she said how happy she was that Dorothea was visiting her and was working for her. And the doctor left, but he just had this like gut feeling that he couldn't get rid of. And Dorothea decided that people were on to her. So she took Esther to another hospital to try to like throw people off. But what Dorothea doesn't realize is when you go to the ER doctors call your primary care physician. So like if you're a cardiac patient and you go to the ER because you have a serious cardiac issue, the ER doctors are going to call your cardiologist and talk about why you came to the ER and discuss a plan.
I didn't know that. I always wondered why they ask who your primary care person is.
Yeah. So they tend to call any specialists you have to talk about your care because the ER doctors don't know you. They're seeing you for 5 minutes. So Dorothea didn't realize this, and the ER called her primary care physician, and that's when he realized, she's in a different hospital now. Her doctor told the ER to do a toxicology screen because he was curious if she had drugs in her system that don't belong there, and she did.
Well, poison.
It was drugs. It was a seizure medication called phenobarbital. And that's something that can sedate you if you don't have seizures. So that's one of the reasons she was feeling so short of breath and down. And then she also gave her a cardiac medication called digoxin, which she wasn't prescribed. But Dorothea was prescribed digoxin.
Oh, so she was just giving the people her medication.
Well, she gave this lady her own medication, yeah. Which causes horrible, like it can cause death. If you're not careful, if you take digoxin and you don't need it or you don't take the right dose, it's very dangerous. So her doctor told Esther, Dorothea is poisoning you, and she fired her immediately. The social worker that worked with Esther, she called authorities to report Dorothea, but since there wasn't any proof, they couldn't pursue it. So she got away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could prove that if you showed that Cherry had a prescription.
Cherry.
Yeah, if she had the prescription and she was taking care of her, and that's kind of proof.
Well, yeah, but they didn't pursue it. They didn't try to prove it. So in 1981, Dorothea goes to a local bar and meets a 42-year-old man named Malcolm McKenzie. They hit it off and decided to go back to his apartment. In the cab, his arms and legs started feeling really tingly and weird. And once they got back to the apartment, he could barely walk. She ended up putting him on the couch.
Slept him to Mickey.
He was laying on the couch and fully awake and conscious, but his body was completely paralyzed. And he had to just lay there, totally paralyzed.
What the hell is that drug?
I'm not sure what she gave him, but
don't tell no one. They could use that.
Laid there.
Keep it a secret.
He laid there totally paralyzed.
That's crazy.
While she grabbed a suitcase out of his closet and stole all of his stuff, and he couldn't do anything. Like, she just stole a bunch of crap, took his cash, his checkbook, a bunch of valuables, and left. She even walked over and took the pinky ring off of his finger.
Now that she knows what drug this is, everyone's in trouble.
Well, she was arrested 2 days later after using one of his stolen checks. She insisted again that he gave it to her, but they didn't buy it. She also insisted that she was 72 years old, but in fact, she was only 53. She was released, but her hearing, because she had a hearing with the judge. She had to see a judge, but it was scheduled for a few months away. So during this few months span of time before she had her hearing for this crime, she decided to pull another con. So she called this lady that she knew named Ruth, and her husband just got diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer. And she said to Ruth, hey, let's start a catering business. And Ruth was like, all right, let's do it. Because I think Ruth wasn't working at the time and she needed some extra money.
Maybe her husband was the breadwinner and now he's in trouble.
Exactly. Her husband's in and out of hospitals. He has mounting, hospital bills because he's got cancer. So they decided to open this this business, and she said, I'm going to open up a joint account for us. Put your money that you're going to put towards this business into this joint account.
Damn.
Right? So she put the money in, and then Dorothea convinced Ruth to move in with her at the house she's staying at with that nice family, because she said, this way you can save money, because, you know, these medical bills are so high. You can move in with me and save money, and then we can get this business going. So Ruth moves in, and a few weeks later, she's starting to feel really run down, and she looked really weak. Her daughter came to visit and saw her sleeping on the couch in the middle of the day, and she was really hard to arouse. So she walked up to Dorothea.
Really hard to arouse and made me laugh.
Wake up. What are you, 5? Wake up. Really hard to wake up. Not arouse as in arouse.
I knew
dummy.
that. I don't know why I just thought that was
You're
funny.
like a 12-year-old boy. So she was really hard to wake up.
My age is less and her age is more.
She was. What does that even mean?
Like, she says her age is more and you say my age is less.
Yes. So her daughter tried to wake her up, but she was sleeping really, really deep. And her daughter got nervous because this was the middle of the day and her mom didn't normally do that.
She couldn't arouse her.
Yeah, she couldn't arouse her. You're so, I don't even know what to say. That's what we call it, especially in the hospital. That's what we say, not arousable.
Couldn't wake her up?
Yeah, couldn't wake her up. So she went up to Dorothea and she's like, why is my mom like this? Why is she so out of it and weak? And Dorothea claimed that they had gone to the ER earlier that day and that she was in the middle of possibly having a nervous breakdown. And the ER gave her a sedative in her IV that made her really tired. And Ruth's daughter believed it. She was like, you know, this is her best friend. She trusted her. She was like, okay, maybe that is really what happened. And she totally believed it. And ended up going home and not thinking much of it. At 5:30 a.m. the next morning, Dorothea called Ruth's children and said to come to the house immediately. When they got there, Dorothea was hysterically crying and said, your mother is dead. And she said
crocodile tears.
Yeah, she was like putting on a show, said your mother's dead, and she said maybe she took too much of her medication. So when she said this, the medical examiner pushed for an autopsy because it struck him weird that she would just offer that up. Like, maybe she took too much of her medication. You know, it's kind of a weird thing to say when someone ends up dead in your house. The tox screen confirmed that she had Tylenol and codeine in her system, but apparently there was no evidence of foul play. So the children were very suspicious of Dorothea. They started asking around. There was apparently no ER visit earlier that day. No doctors ever came to visit their mom. So they went to police, but the police dismissed it as just circumstantial evidence, saying that they couldn't really do anything to prove that Dorothea murdered their mother. Meanwhile, she goes on trial for drugging that guy that she met in the bar and robbing him. Malcolm, the guy, he testified in court, and they ruled that this would go to trial. So she knew she was facing prison time, and she only had a short time to figure something out because she was ready to leave the country at this point. She called one of her friends, and she was crying on the phone. She was like, everyone is treating me so bad. Everyone's taking advantage of me, like playing the whole victim. She was crying her eyes out, and her friend said, you know what, just come over. We'll talk about it. Next. Yeah, well, she said, come over, we'll talk about it. So when Dorothea showed up, she had a bottle of brandy and a bottle of vodka in her hand.
She's ready to party.
Well, her friend found it kind of weird because it's 11 a.m., but she was like, you know, maybe she's really upset. I'll have a cocktail with her. So they got there. Dorothea went in the kitchen, fixed them some cocktails. They got on the couch, and Dorothea was crying. She started venting and talking about how all these people are taking advantage of her. And the next thing she knew, her friend passed out, totally blacked out. When she came to, it was hours later. It was the evening at this point. Her checkbook was missing. A bunch of jewelry was missing. Other possessions were gone. And she went into her kitchen and she found some white powder on the countertop. She called police right away, and they searched for Dorothea. They ended up finding her with a one-way ticket to Mexico, and they arrested her. She
always said she was from Mexico.
She did say she was from Mexico.
Trying to actually, like...
Go there.
Do it.
So she ended up getting 5 years in jail for this, but she took a plea deal to get this 5-year sentence because she could have done longer if she went to trial. She took a plea deal. She got 5 years in jail.
Wait, so she never ended up in Mexico?
No.
They got her before she went to Mexico?
Yeah, she had a one-way ticket. Okay. She ended up in jail for and only spent 3 years because she got out early for good behavior or whatever, which is crazy.
Well, she had no drugs to give people in jail.
Yeah, I mean, she probably was acting totally fine in jail. While in jail, she became pen pals with an 80-year-old man named Everson.
Next.
Who was a lonely widower. This man had a pension.
How do you find pen pals in prison without the internet? That doesn't even make sense.
I don't know. I think they had like...
Is there a Rolodex full of old lonely men that you flip through?
No, I think the men would pursue the women in jail.
But how would he know?
I don't know. Maybe there was like a pen pal service or something.
That's weird.
I know.
It's like, hey, you got any women in here that want an old lonely dude? And like, she does. All right, give me her info.
Yeah, mate. I have no idea how it worked. But this man had a pension, so
Someone let me know that. Go on Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram and let us know.
What, how they would, back then, how they would have. I mean, this was like,
yeah, how
at this
you
point,
get a pen pal
the
back
70s,
then without like internet? If you didn't know the people, there's thousands of people in the jail, or I don't know how many people are in jail. But at Wife of Crime Pod, let us know. We're on there on Instagram a lot.
Yeah, I have no idea how that would even work.
So, I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. But they did have it back then, just like they do now. People like meet their new husbands and wives in jail. They end up getting married while they're still in jail. People are doing life sentences and they get married to
Yeah,
people.
there's actually I saw a TV show or something where there's like some success stories. Like, not everyone's in jail because they're like violent criminals, and now they come out and they had like good lives with their wives. Which is weird to meet them in jail to me still, but hey, good for you.
Yeah, no, I've heard of things like that too.
Not good for me.
Yeah, I think it's a little weird too. I don't know. I wouldn't. Unless it was like a wrongful conviction case.
But how would you, what are you going to like talk to him?
Well, no, like you knew the person or knew people involved and it was a wrongful conviction case. Like I kind of see how that's a little understandable. But
I always wonder how, when you didn't know them beforehand, do you just like go through all the pictures of them being booked and be like, let me see who's cute. Let me send him a letter.
I don't know.
Because they had that model dude, the dude that wasn't a model.
Oh, yeah.
And then he had like the blue eyes. Yeah, he was the black dude with the blue eyes. And then all of a sudden, all the girls started sending him pictures and wanting to love him. Yeah. And then he came out and he became a model.
He did.
But he's probably back in jail now.
He did become a model. I remember that guy. That's crazy. I know, that's so weird. The whole thing is kind of weird to me. So Everson had this pension. So, of course, Dorothea was all about it. She's like, oh, this guy's got a pension. I'm jumping on it. So they wrote back and forth and, became pen pals over the course of 3 years. While in jail, she would see a psychiatrist. And this psychiatrist reported that she was totally disassociated from her crimes. She was in total denial about anything that she had done wrong.
Played the victim.
Yeah, played the victim.
I hate people that play the victim. Just fess up to your stuff.
I agree, totally.
I know what I'm doing wrong and what I'm not good at.
Yeah, same.
I really can't think of anything, but if I did think of any, I would tell everyone. I wouldn't tell you either. Forget it. Take all that back.
But you would fess up to it. If you were wrong, you would say, I'm wrong. You've done that before.
I haven't been wrong since 1996. I think we discussed this on a previous podcast.
Okay, whatever. Well, anyway, she played the victim, said it was everybody else's fault. Those types of people. Everything's everybody else's fault. So she ended up seeing the psychiatrist while she was in jail, and they recommended that when she got out, she was followed by a psychologist, but none of this was ever, kept up with. So when she got out of jail, she moved back into that top floor apartment at 1426 F Street, and the family that loved her and considered her like an abuela, they were really happy to have her back. They still loved her. They ended up going on an extended vacation back to their home country. And Dorothea quickly decided she needs to figure out a way to make some money. So she rented out space in the house for people and opened up this boarding house again. Now, part of her parole...
Where did she get money to, like, get these big houses?
No, she was renting it. She was renting the top floor apartment. She didn't own this house.
Oh.
The family owned it. And they went on an extended vacation. And when they left, she decided to rent out the rooms in the house.
You know what this podcast... I just had a song pop in my head. That girl is poison.
She was. Yeah. Totally.
That's like her theme song. She'd walk in the room and start doing the Running Man.
So her pen pal, remember Everson, the one she wrote to in jail?
I didn't know his name, but yeah, I remember him.
Well, he decided to pack up his stuff, pack up his Airstream and his red pickup truck and drive to Sacramento to be with his new lady and marry her right away.
Sucker for love.
So now Everson, they didn't end up getting married, but he did move in with her into this house. And after a few months, Everson's sister was a little worried about him. So she sent over the police to check up on him just because she didn't know where he was, what was going on. And Everson got really mad at his sister and called her and was like, listen, I'm a grown man. I can do what I want. Don't send police here. I'm fine. I
respect that.
My lady or whatever.
I respect that. I wouldn't want someone sending the police. You come looking for
True,
yourself.
but he is...
Because now you're also insulting, like, my manhood, like, I can't take care of myself.
Well, that's true. That's how older men are. He's 80 years old, so
and
he's lived a long life. And
younger men, because I'm a younger man.
Yes, yeah, but no one would send the police if you just moved somewhere. But he's 80, so I'm sure his sister was worried about him.
She'd be like, where's my brother?
Maybe. So Dorothea, a couple months later, sent Everson's sister a letter, and Dorothea forged this letter. She claimed that it was from Everson, and it said, I'm leaving Dorothea and I'm moving south. Well,
hitchhiking south.
He didn't. Dorothea killed him. She poisoned him and then locked his dead body in one of the bedrooms of the house.
Can't trust a big butt and a smile.
The way that
girl is poison.
It's true. She is poison.
That's a song. Look that song up if you don't know. It's a good song.
I hope people know that song.
There's a lot of songs I don't know.
Well, she killed him, put his body in one of the bedrooms, and she signed over. No one knew he was dead, so all of his pension checks were now coming to her, and she was forging his signature and signing them over to her. As part of her parole requirement, she couldn't have any contact with vulnerable people. So she wasn't allowed to work with older people, mentally ill people. She wasn't allowed to work with anyone down and out because of everything that had happened before.
But you can't always know if someone's vulnerable.
No, as vulnerable...
Because if someone meets me, I'm not like, hey, my name is Russ. I'm not vulnerable. We could be friends.
No, Russ. I'm talking about a vulnerable population. In the world, a vulnerable population would be the elderly or the mentally ill. Those people get taken advantage of more than the average person. And that's what they mean. Because
when you're old, you lose your marbles a little.
No, when you're old, you're...
Well, you're not strong either no more.
Yeah, like you're just vulnerable. Exactly. It's exactly what it means. So...
I bet old people listen to this podcast because they don't know what podcasts are.
No, my grandmother listens. Gigi listens to this podcast.
Sup, G?
My grandmother, her name is Gigi, and she listens to this podcast.
Who downloaded the app for her?
Somebody did, and she listens. So she started violating her parole by taking in the elderly and mentally ill tenants into this home anyway, because she doesn't care about anyone but herself. She doesn't even care about consequences to her actions, really. Meanwhile, Everson's body is still locked in one of the bedrooms, and it's starting to get stinky.
How long does it take for a body to stink?
I think it just takes a matter of like a few days to a week.
Yeah, I thought it was like a couple days.
So she hired this handyman named Ishmael Flores.
Dead.
And no, he ended up buying Everson's truck. She claimed that it was her truck. She sold Everson's red pickup truck to him at a discounted rate and then said, hey, can you build me a storage box, 6 foot by 3 foot?
So Wow, she called it a storage box, but that's a coffin.
Well, she claimed that she was going to use it to put a bunch of stuff in and put it in her storage unit. And he didn't, obviously, he got this little old lady in his mind. He looks at her as a little old lady. He thinks, oh, yeah, she just needs some help. So he builds her this box, not realizing that he's building a makeshift coffin for Everson.
You called his work makeshift.
No, I called the box a makeshift coffin.
Coffins are just boxes anyway.
So
Shout out to that guy's work. He probably did good work.
Well, he assumed it was just for storage. And one day, she asked him to put it in the back of the pickup truck and drive it to the storage unit. So he picked it up, he put it there, they both drove to the storage unit. And on the way there, Dorothea goes, you know what? Never mind. I don't need this stuff. I'm not going to take it to the storage unit. And they were in the middle of this kind of remote part of the highway. And she goes, let's just dump it off here. I don't even want this stuff. And Flores didn't question her. He was like, okay, if that's what she wants.
Oh, the body was in there already?
She put it in there. I don't know how she got it in there, but she did.
She's not that old.
Yeah, she's not that old. So they pulled over the side of the road. They dumped the box near this river off the highway. And that's it. Months later, the body was eventually discovered, but he was processed as a John Doe because no one had reported Everson missing and no one knew that he was gone.
So his sister wasn't crazy.
No, his sister wasn't crazy.
She's probably like sad but mad. Like, see, I was looking for you.
I'm sure she was. His pension checks kept coming, and because no one knew he was dead, and she just kept on cashing them. 57-year-old Dorothea took in 8 people. She cooked for them. She did their laundry. She also said, sign all of your government checks over to me. I will manage your money, because some of them were alcoholics. Some of them were a little older and kind of, like you said, losing their marbles a little bit.
If there's anyone out there that wants to sign their checks over to me, I'll manage your money for you too.
Well,
and I'll keep most of it.
You're full of crap. She managed,
but you have
quote
to say
unquote,
okay.
She said she would manage their money.
That's so stupid. That's why I said that. Like, who's stupid enough to do that? There's no one.
Vulnerable people. Why aren't you getting this? People who are mentally ill, who are slow, who are disabled, who are elderly. Those are the type of people that would get taken advantage of by her.
Okay.
So she said, I'll manage your money. And, this was probably one of the nicest places that a lot of these people had lived before, because they were kind of down and out. And this was like a bed and breakfast. She had home cooked meals. She took good care of them. So they trusted her. So over the next few years, she ran it for a few years. And over this time, she would occasionally get really angry. She would become drunk and go on these bingers and then get really angry. She would sometimes hit them or yell at them or punch them. And it would happen so infrequently that they didn't want to ruin this nice place they were living in, that they just never told anybody that this was going on. So over some time, some of the tenants became more ill. And then some of the tenants just started randomly disappearing. One of the tenants, named Betty Palmer, moved into the house, and shortly after moving in, she became very sick. And then all of a sudden, 1 month later, she just disappeared.
Aren't they there for being sick, though?
No, they're just old, or they're old or slow, or
vulnerable.
They're not necessarily sick, because she wouldn't let anybody who was super sick live there, because she didn't want a lot of doctors coming by. She didn't want anyone who was going to constantly check up on these people coming to the house. So Dorothea ended up drugging Betty, because, like I said, she disappeared after 1 month. Dorothea drugged her, and she died. And then Dorothea chopped off her head and her hands and buried the body in the yard. But her hands and head were never found.
Why go through all that work?
Because she didn't want her body identified. So she chopped off her head and her hands, buried the body, and then covered the hole with cement. And like I said, the head and the hands were never found. Neighbors knew that Dorothea liked to garden late at night, but no one ever suspected anything. They just thought that she enjoyed gardening at night.
Wow.
So she started killing the tenants mainly that became inconvenient.
Because no one gardens at night. So if you ever see someone garden at night,
you gotta wonder
they're up
about
to some suspicious behavior.
Yeah, that's weird to me. I don't know why anybody wouldn't think that's a red flag.
There's someone out there right now that's thinking, yo, my neighbor gardens at night. Or they might be thinking, I garden at night because I'm up late.
That's true.
You shut up.
That's probably true. So now she would kill the tenants that became inconvenient to her. So if they started questioning her at all, or questioning where are these other residents? Where did they go? If they started doing that, she would drug them and kill them. She would kill the ones that became very sick and whose health issues were really hard to manage. And people just started vanishing at more rapid rates.
Wow.
Over the course of months, numerous tenants went missing. And social workers, though, they weren't super suspicious because although these were vulnerable people, they were still adults. They were older people, and some of them were alcoholics. They were adults. And so if they just they moved somewhere else or went to another residence, like no one really thought anything of it at the time because in the moment,
you're a grown person.
Yeah, they're adults. It didn't seem weird. So in 1988, a social worker named Judy had a patient named Bert, who was...
Another old person name. All these names are extinct.
Well, Bert was intellectually disabled.
Shout out to the young Berts.
Yeah, I don't know any Berts. Bert is an older guy's name.
Yep.
I can't think of anyone like under the age of 60 named Bert. Well, Bert,
Ernie knows Bert.
You're corny. So Bert, he was intellectually disabled. He was a little slower, probably, undiagnosed autistic, I would say, or he was functional.
Was that something you could be diagnosed with back then, or is that like a newer thing? 'Cause I didn't hear of it until I was older.
I think it's just a newer diagnosis because they've learned more about autism.
It's like a more specific diagnosis probably than in the previous, where they would have called them vulnerable.
They would have just called them mentally retarded or mentally ill or something like that back then. But now, he's functional. It's not like he's not functional. He's just a little slow. So Bert moved into the house. And Judy was super happy for him. Judy is his social worker. She was super happy for him because he had been previously living in a group home with recovering addicts. And it's just not the place for him. Like he's just a guy who's a little slower. He shouldn't be living with a bunch of recovering addicts. He slept on a cot
True, he don't do drugs.
on the floor. And so she was really happy that he finally had like a house and, a place that he could consider home. And Dorothea and him seemed to get along really well. Dorothea listed herself as Bert's cousin on his Social Security records shortly after he moved in. He was receiving $500 a month in a check, and this check started going right to her. She would give him an allowance.
That's a lot of money back then, probably.
Yeah, well, she would give him an allowance of a very small fraction of this check, and that was his allowance while he lived there. So more tenants started disappearing, and in 1 year, 6 tenants disappeared. Dorothea lost patience with Bert because doctors kept visiting him because he was diagnosed with tuberculosis. So it was a managed diagnosis, like they were giving him medication and everything, but the doctors kept having to come and see him. And this was making Dorothea really upset because she didn't want all of her crimes to be uncovered. Bert showed up at his old group home one day, very distraught, and he started begging them to let him move back in. He said, I don't want to live there anymore. I don't want to be there. I don't like it. And they kept asking him, why? What's going on? But he couldn't put into words.
Couldn't articulate it.
He couldn't articulate exactly why he didn't like living there anymore. So they convinced him. They said, you know what? This is a really nice place. You should stay there. Don't leave. Don't come back here. This isn't a great place.
Now he's going to wake up dead.
So they convinced him to stay there and said it was a much nicer situation. The social,
They're like, it's shit here. Don't come back.
Yeah, they did say that. I mean, we
got people in the bathroom smoking crack.
It was a rough
We need
place.
to go back.
So this was a way nicer situation
With cherry.
On paper.
Abuela cherry.
Abuela cherry. So the social worker, Judy, she came to visit Bert, But Dorothea said that he went to visit his family in Mexico. And this was like, Judy wasn't buying it. She was like, Bert can't even get on the bus and go across town. How is he going to get on a plane and go all the way to Mexico by himself? That's not possible. But she was like, all right, I'll check back in a couple weeks. So she checked back in, and there were more excuses about where Bert was. And then one day, Judy received a phone call from a man who claimed to be Bert's brother-in-law. And this guy said that he was taking Bert to move to Utah for good. And Bert was going to live in Utah from now on. But Judy was super suspicious. She knew that this wasn't real. She didn't believe it for a second. She called police. When police showed up, one of the tenants slipped a note secretly to police. And the note said, "She's making me lie for her." Police informed Dorothea that she was in violation of her parole because she started taking tenants in. And remember, she wasn't allowed to do that. So the detectives stayed there for a little while, and they were interviewing tenants and they were interviewing her. And things just didn't seem right. And these guys like had a really suspicious feeling. They had a gut feeling. They were like, something is not right here. So they asked if they could stay and dig in the yard. Huh? I don't know why they decided.
That's so random.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to dig in the yard. Like, what tipped them off? But they asked her if they could dig in the yard, a couple holes.
Pooped her pants right there.
Well, she said yes. She agreed. And she stood on the porch and watched them dig. And they ended up digging for a few hours. And they almost gave up. And then all of a sudden, they dug down and they hit something hard. Something that didn't seem like it belonged in the earth. They reached down and they pulled out a decaying leg bone. So they made the yard a crime scene. They looked up at Dorothea, who's standing on the porch watching them, and she has her mouth covered with her hands, and she's like, gasping. But she knew all along she's the one that put these bodies there. So they brought her into the police station for questioning, and they planned to completely excavate the yard the next day because now it's in the evening. They can't do it at night. So they plan to tear the yard apart the next day. No.
She's out.
They didn't book her.
She's out.
They didn't book her because
straight to Mexico.
They didn't have a way to prove that she did it, which I think is weird. People go to jail for way less things. They find a dead body in your yard and you have a criminal history. How are they not able to book you for something? But they didn't. They let her go home.
That's not me.
The next morning, police came to excavate the yard. Dorothea, she was still there. She didn't end up leaving yet. She walked up to the detective and she said, I'm feeling really anxious. Right down the street is this coffee shop. One of my tenants is there. Do you mind if I meet my tenant for a cup of coffee just to get away from the house? Because this whole thing is making me really anxious. And the detective agreed. He agreed to let her go get a cup of coffee. Which, like, how dumb are you?
Code for I'm out of here.
So she was impeccably dressed. She had perfect makeup on. She had $3,000 in her purse. And the detective walked her a few blocks down to this coffee shop. And he saw that one of her tenants was waiting there for her. So he just let her stay in the coffee shop and he walked back to the house. So she only stayed there for maybe 5 minutes. Her and the tenant decided to hop in a cab and go to a bar. And they started drinking. They had a
better choice. Coffee shops are a little boring. And there's too many hipsters.
Well, they ended up having a few drinks, and she said to her tenant...
And they always serve avocado toast. I don't like avocado toast.
I love avocado toast.
It's over. It's not even nothing. They just sliced avocado, slapped it on bread, and charged you $8 for it. Get out of here.
I like avocado toast.
I know, because you're like kind of a hipster.
I am. I know. So they go to this bar. They have a few drinks, and... she puts her tenant in a cab and says, go back to the house. She gets in a cab and she goes 4 hours away to some town.
Mexico.
Not to Mexico, but some town in California. And I think it's called Stockton. And meanwhile, while this is all happening, a second body is uncovered. So now they have enough to arrest her. So the detective, he's like, oh shit, I just let her go to this coffee shop. So he sprints down the block to go after her. He gets to the coffee shop. She's gone. This is a matter of 30 minutes. She's gone. And now nowhere to be found. So within 24 hours, her photo is everywhere, all over the news, all over newspapers. Literally everywhere, all over the country. She is like on America's Most Wanted. Yeah, she's...
What's that guy's name?
Oh, I forgot.
I think his name's John.
I forgot his name.
All right.
So she's all over TV.
He's the OG true crime guy, but I think he's like the first one.
Well, you know what happened? You know, his son.
Yeah, his son got like kidnapped and something. I don't know.
I think killed. His son was killed.
Crazy.
And he decided to do that. How crazy is that?
Was he in the entertainment business before that? I wonder.
I'm honestly not sure.
I mean, I don't know if it was meant to be entertaining or not, but they did.
But yeah, like was he on the news or something? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like was he a TV dude?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. So anyway, her face was, plastered all over the news and everything, all over the newspaper. And she's out. She's in this whole other part of California at this point. So by November 13th, 7 bodies were uncovered in the yard. And this became a total sensation. It was like a phenomenon because female serial killers are very rare. And, they're, like I said, they're known to kill for different reasons.
His name is John Walsh.
Oh, yeah, John Walsh. That's right.
I had to look it up. It was driving me nuts. Russ, the researcher, was on the case for that one.
Yeah, John Walsh. Yeah, he's a good dude. So this became a total phenomenon, and people were obsessed. They were like tuning in every night to the news, trying to find this lady who's on the run. And she ended up going to this motel in this town 4 hours away. After being like held up, she stayed in the motel for 3 days. She didn't leave the room. She decided to go to a local bar. She met a man who was sitting at the bar, and she started flirting with him. And after they both got a little drunk, she asked about his finances. And that's where she took the conversation. And she suggested that they continue to see each other. She really wanted to go back to his apartment that night, but he wasn't comfortable with it.
Respect. Play hard to get, guys. Don't always give it up on the first date. Make them wait a little. They always think it's us. Take the power back.
Well, he wasn't about it. So he said, you know what? How about we meet each other tomorrow? We'll meet each other tomorrow and we'll hang out then. So he goes home after, being at the bar with her, and he sees her face on TV, on the news, and he immediately called police. So police tracked...
He's probably like, thank God I didn't take that crazy bitch back to the house.
Right? Thank God he
This is
didn't.
why you got to play hard to get, guys. First, say no, look them up on Facebook or something, and make them earn it.
You're acting like... women are at way more risk than men. This female serial killers are rare.
But women are more crazy.
No!
Yes.
Women are emotional, but there are way more killers that are men. Men do way more horrific things to women than women do to men. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad women out there, but when you look at the risks, women are way more at risk.
Probably, but
it's
women
true.
are still more
Just
crazy.
Just say yes. You know I'm right.
Women don't even like women. They don't even stay friends for a long time. Men stay friends from the day they could talk till the day they die. Even if they hate each other, they see each other like, what up, asshole? Kiss my ass. All right, want to get a beer? Okay.
That's true. Women are a lot more emotional and a little more petty sometimes. So
and grudge holders.
We are grudge holders. That's definitely true. So police track her down, and they knock on the motel door, and she willingly went with him because she knew, you know what? Time's up. That's it. So on November 17th, she was arraigned, and police worked nonstop to get all the evidence in order to prove that she poisoned and murdered these people, because the defense was going to try and prove that they died of natural causes and she just buried them because they had no one else. That's the kind of angle they were going at.
How do these defense live with themselves when they know someone's guilty? And they defend them, and they try to put up a really good fight.
I think because in our country, the way our government and our justices have been set up, everyone has the right to a trial, and that's what a lot of defense attorneys.
If I was a lawyer and I knew you were guilty for a fact, and you did some bad shit to a child, or
I know that's what's hard.
You did some real bad stuff. I would it'd be the equivalent to baseball. I'm going to strike out on purpose. And you're going to jail.
I mean, some defense attorneys do that. They drop the ball, I think, on purpose sometimes. But I don't know. It's probably a tough job being a criminal defense attorney.
Unless you're a scumbag who
But
gets paid a lot.
Yeah, a lot of them make a lot of money. And I'm not saying they're all scumbags because I'm sure they're not. There's a lot of like public defenders who are amazing people who
Like Johnny
work
Cochran. He
hard.
got OJ off and everyone knew OJ did it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, the glove don't fit, you must have quit. He made like a half of a rap verse and then OJ got off.
So true. It's so crazy.
And of course the glove wasn't going on because OJ didn't put his fingers all the way together. If you keep them a little separate, you can't get no damn glove on no matter what size it is. And I just happened to have a pair of gloves on the table.
I know, it's so weird. I don't know how anybody can defend a clearly guilty person, but you know, they do. They try to separate emotions from it and look at strictly as, you know, look at the law strictly.
But you know what?
Objectively.
If someone gave me $1 million, I might have defended OJ too.
I don't know.
For $1 million?
You can't live with yourself after that. Would you be able to live with yourself knowing that a real murderer
just
is
like
walking free
I'd live
because
with-
you did it?
Yeah, I'd live with myself just like Scrooge McDuck. I would jump in the money head first and do
Yes.
backstrokes.
You're so full of it. All right. So they knew that the defense was going to try to prove that these people died and that she didn't murder them, but she just buried them to try to get her off. So her ex-fiance, Everson, the one that, you know, was her pen pal, he ended up being identified. And her trial ended up being scheduled for 3 years after she was arraigned.
Yeah, but isn't she in jail?
Yeah, they kept her in jail because she's a flight risk, clearly. So she ended up spending 3 years in county jail waiting for
So who cares if it
this
takes long?
trial.
She's still suffering the consequences as if she was convicted because in this country, you are guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, some people need to be in jail.
Like her, she was a flight risk, so she
And
deserves
if she's
to
a
be in
death
jail.
threat, she's going to kill someone.
True.
It's even worse. Who cares if she dips?
Yeah.
Dips means leave,
People know what dips means.
just in case.
So she was charged with 9 counts of murder. Her trial began in 1993, and it lasted almost a year. Okay? She just, like during the course of this trial, during the year, she would tell inmates and cops that she was misunderstood and they were getting her all wrong, you know, playing that whole card that she always does because she's totally the most self-centered, delusional person. So the jury ended up, after the trial was over, well, not over, but, you know, when it was time for the jury to deliberate, the deliberation went on and on and on. They broke a record after getting to 23 days of deliberating because 11 of the jurors wanted to convict her, but one juror named Jesus Sanchez said he didn't want to decide her fate and he would not agree. Finally, after 6 weeks of deliberation, which is insane, that's like a ridiculously long time.
That's like 6 weeks of arguing.
He was not going to do it. He just would not give in.
It's
Finally,
like when you try to get me to do chores. It's like you keep asking me and asking me, like, I'm not doing it. And then I just say yes.
well,
But then I still don't do it. Welcome to a little peek of our lives. Just comes home. She looks at the dishes. She goes, "You didn't think about doing the dishes?" I go, "I thought about it."
It's so true. It's the worst. And we have a dishwasher, so it's easy. You just throw them on. He has done them lately, though, so don't act
And
like
the
you haven't. You have
dishwasher's
done the
name
dishes
is
lately.
Jess.
You've done the dishes lately, so stop.
Sometimes you do things to shut people up.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that me nagging you caused you to do the dishes. It benefited me.
I'm not doing the dishes no more.
So after
I'm not going to be defeated.
So after 6 weeks, Jesus Sanchez would only agree to convict her on 3 counts of murder.
That's enough to book her forever. She's old.
So finally, a verdict was reached. 3 of the murder charges were convictions, but the other 6 were considered a mistrial because Jesus Sanchez would not agree to deliberate anymore. The jury was now put in charge of sentencing. They were in charge of either giving her life or death. The jury, again, was deadlocked. Therefore, the judge had to finally make a ruling. He sentenced her to life without the possibility of parole in Central California Women's Facility. And that's where she was until she died in 2011. In 2004, she made headlines again because she published a cookbook
Oh.
called Cooking with a Serial Killer. How weird is that? And then in 2009...
She's like kind of smart.
She's not smart.
For that book.
She's a selfish...
True crime community would eat that up, no pun intended. After I thought about it, I was like, that was clever.
Well, in 2009, she did an interview, and her last public statement was, "I don't give a shit what anyone thinks about me." That's the last thing she said. And then in 2011, she died in her sleep in her cell. After being so evil as to kill all of these innocent people who trusted her, and she manipulated them and lied to them and stole all their money, she got to die a peaceful death, which I'll never understand.
She was probably died old, right?
Yeah, it was 2011. She was born in 1929. I don't know.
Someone do the math. I ain't doing all that.
I don't know the math either.
I don't have enough fingers to do that math.
So that was Dorothea Puente. She was evil, and I actually got really mad when I was writing this.
She was self-centered.
The most self-centered. I mean, you have to have antisocial personality disorder, which is, or she has to be a full-blown narcissist, where she literally does not think of anything but herself or how to benefit herself, could care less about any other human being or anything but herself on this planet, which is horrible.
Well,
because
the moral of the story is don't trust hookers.
Or old ladies.
Unless they listen to Wife of Crime.
Just kidding. Not old ladies. But an old lady who...
I like old people.
Me too.
They teach you how to play. They like, in the casino, they're the best.
I love
just
old people,
play
too.
blackjack with them and...
Don't trust a 50-year-old woman who claims that she's 70.
No, don't trust hookers.
Anyway, so that was kind of a long one, too. Jeez.
Yeah,
We're doing some long ones.
How long was it so far?
An hour and 20 minutes.
Holy moly. I was like, man, this seems long, but I'm like, I don't have a lot of patience. So I guess we're going to end this now because it was really long.
It was. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story of our first serial killer that we've ever covered. First female serial killer that we've ever covered. Yeah.
I appreciate everyone listening. Go to Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram and hit us up.
Have a good week, everyone. Bye.